that'd be more in the center of your
Yeah.
speaker floor bottom, and then there's the size. So how this is relative to the speaker system. So this will get it kind of on all speakers, and then the size is how much is going to be in all the speakers here.
Does it also utilize divergence, where it's kind of, is that the same parameter here in a 360 space?
That's what the size is, I guess. Is it a divergence?
How much is diverging between the different speakers as you move it between?
And then you can create this shape here. So let me see if I can.
Interesting. You're reshaping the sound.
Yeah, so I can say that it's going to sit in this kind of shape. If I have it here in the middle, it's going to diverge towards the center speaker and then out towards the
front and center without sending it to the right and left-hand side. Hit play and go ahead and let that roll so we can kind of hear what that sounds like in the headphones.
Let's see if I can just solo this. So because I have my automation off, though, like if I just move this, do you hear how it gets right? And then loses.
Yeah, I can definitely hear. It's interesting what sort of trickery they might be doing to make it present closer to the center of your head, especially with a set of headphones.
And then it sounds like it's going behind you.
Well, it is Dolby. They're kind of the pioneers in this sort of thing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Fantastic.
So let me go through here and kind of show like what.
Yeah, show us what this workflow looks like. Yeah. So somebody here, flip us over to your edit window real quick and just kind of give us an overview. If you'll bear claw down, Control, Alt, Command, and down arrow, that'll fit most of your tracks on the screen. Yeah, there you go. I call it bear claw. So Control, Alt, Command, and then that up and down. Okay, so we've got a bunch, obviously, of your tracks that you've built in. Did you program all these in Pro Tools, or did you bring them in from something else?
Ableton. So I made everything in Ableton, and then I mixed the vocals and everything inside Pro Tools. And then I do all my when I'm in Ableton, it's more production based and shaping sounds, building sounds.
So one of the things I noticed, obviously, is that you got a ton of tracks, probably more than most people might be looking at. But these ton of tracks, if we scroll down, all of a sudden you've got a ton of other tracks that are not just AUX buses or extra effects sends. These are what's required to actually do a surround plus Dolby Atmos mix.
Right. And then this is the Wild West, so I'm learning on what's going to work and what's not going to work.
So tell us about the approach that you've taken, because you're right, there's no manuals on this. There's no place to start, really. So what is it that you have done, and what does this unique routing look like when mixing for surround and Atmos?
Okay, so my objective, what I'm trying to achieve is I want to put the listener in the middle of the song.
Okay.
And I want to try to create this landscape that's totally 360 degrees, right?
Okay.
So you have to now think about how you're going to achieve that.
Okay.
What I like to do when I'm mixing in stereo is I use a lot of stereo imaging plugins that allow me to separate frequency bands and widen that or narrow certain things, so it kind of gives the perspective of depth.
The illusion of it.
The illusion of it, right.
Do you have a chunk of this song that you feel like kind of represents that best that we could hear? Or like keeping the listener in the center of the action?
Probably in this.
Interesting to hear him go from kind of front, left, center here in my headphones to somewhere behind me and above me, especially with his vocal, because that is creating a very sensory and 360 experience.
Yeah, and it takes a little time to actually perceive what's actually happening.
Yeah,
and that's why I'm trying to. This is where my workflow starts to come in. So I'm trying to say, how can I exaggerate the sense that we're hearing in our headphones? How can I mix it so that becomes more apparent? Because it has, you have to deal with amplitude and then the spatial thing, X, Y, and Z coordinate. So
why don't you start us with what kind of track would you like to start us with? That vocal obviously gives an example of a lot of movement around. How are you dealing with the day-to-day stuff? The kick drums, your snare drums. Where do you pan those? Well, you've got an entire space.
So that's where it's less about. I'm finding less about the individual elements and more about the bigger picture. Okay, I want to mix into this giant thing that I make.
Okay.
So I want to make an environment that that I know where the spatial elements are. Like, for example, I have a front reverb, a middle reverb, and a back reverb.
Can you click on that and kind of show us what that looks like?
Right. So, but now I can't get ahead of myself.
Okay.
Right. So these are objects in space, and we're going to go and talk about what objects are. Right.
Okay.
But first, I want to hit on how I'm routing it, and then the mindset behind why I'm doing it this way.
Great.
So I'm sending everything to, so from the individual channels, right? So for example, the reverb, we'll just start there, easy example.
Okay.
I'm sending from my vocal tracks, I'm sending individual sends here. So one goes to the front, one goes to the middle.
Zoom in a little bit on that so it's a little more clear on the screen.
So these are just my vocal sends
on
my vocals track. So I have 3 of them, right?
Yep.
That go to the front, middle, and the back. That's
Okay.
where it starts.
Okay.
And then they hit the reverbs.
So the vocal sends are going to front, middle, and back.
Different reverbs,
Okay.
right. So on the reverbs here, I have my first front reverb is at a 5 millisecond pre-delay.
Okay.
My second one's at a 22 second. The third one's at a 50 millisecond pre-delay. Right?
Okay.
So that it.
But then you're placing those reverbs at different places in the room.
Correct. So they're going to buses first. So I'm hitting them just like I would normal sends, and then I'm taking those
Okay.
and I'm sending those into objects that are spaces or places in the basically the Dolby Atmos space.
Zoom in down on that so people watching can kind of see this. So, okay, so right now it's been a fairly straightforward. You got your vocal, but now to create this sense of volume, you've created 3 normal sends that we would expect, and that's going over here to these reverb returns.
Correct.
These reverb returns are coming in from the buses and going out. You've got this going out to another output.
Yes, this is going to another aux track.
Okay.
Which is a object in the Dolby Atmos space.
Can you show us what that looks like to make an object track? How is that different?
It's just it's easy as a click of a button here.
Okay.
So I can when you're making a track here and your options on the bottom, you'll see objects
now.
Right?
Okay.
So
only available in Ultimate. So if you're using regular Pro Tools,
so you won't see it here.
Gotcha.
But
so now
object,
those tracks you're routing to objects.
Right. So usually now if it looks like this track right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to the 7-1 bed that I have set up. We're just giving you a brief overview first.
And then go through it.
Yeah. And then, so when you click on this button here, it says now it's an object. And what that means is I can now put this object anywhere in the Dolby space. So here is the space that I can then position that object in. So,
wow.
So if I press play here, let me go back here to the vocal in the beginning.
By the way, this vocal coming in from Austin Taylor of Park Wild. Fantastic track you guys produced.
Yeah, man, he's badass. Park Wild.
Love this mix.
Yep. So you'll see here, these are the 3 reverbs that I have set up.
Yeah.
And you can see it in a 3-dimensional space that I have ones at the front top, one at the middle top, and then I have these at the back.
Nice.
And you're like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
So
over there in Pro Tools, back in that mix window, you go and zoom in on, so physically, let's say, where's front reverb?
So here's front reverb,
yep,
right?
It's going to object.
And then see, this is how I'm panning it.
Okay, so you're panning that
space.
Front reverb. So anything sent to that object is essentially going to be routed into that panning.
It's not going to come out anywhere else than that position.
Yeah.
In space.
Mm-hmm.
It won't go out any of the other speakers, basically.
So then that essentially is then routing it to the object over in the Dolby window.
Correct.
So then this goes out, you flip over to Dolby, and that object shows up. What was it? Object number what?
That's object number 1.
Okay, and we see it lit up right there.
So here, I'll go ahead and mute these, and then we can go back. So you'll see that's just the front reverb right there playing.
Yeah.
When the vocal comes in. Here, I'll go ahead and go back to the beginning. Try to pretend that we're fine. Push it aside. So those are the front here.
Yeah.
Every time that we fight, don't matter.
And I'll go ahead and solo the vocal real quick.
Rehearse these words a million times.
Okay.
Try to pretend that we're fine. Push it aside every time.
I got a solo safe.
Every time that we fight.
Solo safe. The friend of the Ong's return.
The friends of the Ong's.
Try to pretend that we're fine.
I got all these delays set up.
That's a lot of delays. Are you doing the same thing with essentially making objects for delays?
Yes.
So that specific delays show up at different points in the room?
Yes.
That's awesome.
So instead of, okay, so look.
Same
Delay,
thing.
Quarter note delay. Yep, half note delay.
So if you'll flip over there real quick, flip back over to Dolby. So essentially then when you're sending to a specific delay, that is showing up here as one of these objects.
Yep.
And then when you select that object, do you select it and then you place it in the space?
No, that's what the panner does.
Okay.
So this is, I'm panning these objects to be in a specific place. That's what the panning does.
Okay, that makes
basically,
sense
right? And then I can move those objects anywhere in that environment.
Can you kind of show me what that looks like?
Making
sure that I know that this was a difficult concept. Anthony and I recently sat down at Belmont University's studio manager, Dave Warburton, and he kind of showed us what the amazing stuff those guys are doing with Atmos mixing and stuff there. So it's a challenging workflow because obviously it requires a new kind of high concept way of approaching mixing, but you've got a lot more options.
Yeah, and I think we maybe not dive too much into the technical thing of what's going on.
No, probably not. That would not come across.
Yeah,
very well.
Versus let's talk about like just the theory of what you can do.
Yeah.
In the mix of how you approach mixing, because I think there's everyone's like I could teach you how to compress all that stuff, right?
Sure.
But about now creating an experience for the listener, right? And what you need to do or how you could think about approaching that with a tool like this.
Yeah.
Right? I've always wanted to put the listener, like I said, in the middle of the song.
Right.
So I could now figure out ways to creatively create that landscape using this. So like, for example, with depth and things like that.
Yeah.
Like how are you going to, if I want the vocal to sound like it's, behind the screen, because you're essentially looking at a screen, right? But I want it to sound like I want two objects here in the front and I want one to be back here.
Yeah.
How am I going to create that
illusion?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying to experiment and figure out a way to do that, right? So you have, objects is a one possible way to do this, right? So to go back a step, let's talk about the 7.1.2 bed.
Yeah.
Right?
So this was one of the things that I think was clarified most to me when we looked at this recently, is that it still is basically an approach where you're making a bit of a traditional surround mix. Not 5.1, but mostly 7.1, 7. Center right, left surround, right surround, overheads, and maybe a sub.
Yeah, and the LFE, yeah.
Yeah. And so you're still doing that, but now you also have this additional option to create all these objects, aka locations in space of whatever size and location you want around you. And now you can send specific things or, of course, a submix of things to that object as well, which creates a ton of creative possibilities.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You can have something, say, when you're, because it was based off of a movie, so if you're looking at a screen,
right,
and you see an object in depth, through the screen, you can make it sound like it's out back where the picture is, and if it came forward to you, you can make that feeling through the speakers.
Okay, so take us through the 7.1 bed that you were talking about.
Okay, so I'm Italian. I talk with my hands.
It's very difficult to show on a screen.
Yeah,
There's no hands.
There's no hands.
Right.
So okay, so this is your 7.1 bed bus.
Yeah.
Right, and then what I did was I made master faders for each one of the channels in the 7.1 bus.
Okay.
Right. So I have a left and right channel, an overhead channel, a center channel, LFE channel, left surround, right surround, left rear surround, right rear surround.
Now, just as a heads up for anyone coming from a traditional stereo mixing background, for a lot left and right.
Mhm.
That alone seems like a substantial jump, I think, to suddenly be dealing with that many parameters or that many places they could pan their mix.
Yeah.
But that's what you've done, and I think that's a fairly straightforward concept. Instead of panning just to the left and the right speaker, you can now pan it between actual physical speakers located around a space.
Yes. And so like when for example, here's the 7-1 panner. It looks just like the object panner.
Right.
But now it is limited to the 7.1.2 bus speakers in the system. So when you're panning this object, or not this object, that's
right. Wrong
word.
You wouldn't say that.
This piece of the element of the song, this vocal track, for example, it's only going to hit, from my understanding, it's only going to hit the speakers that are attached to the 7.1.2 bed.
Okay.
Those main 10
Or at the very
speakers.
least, that's the down mix that would be used if someplace didn't have Atmos playback. They
Correct.
didn't have a system that could play Atmos. Just to clarify for those, since this is a new concept, the Atmos system, when it plays back, is essentially rendering virtual objects in space, somehow doing all of its complicated math to figure out it still has to use this whatever speakers are available, but it's then doing its best job to put those in that virtual space. But you're saying this mix is actually just dedicated to the speakers.
Yes, correct. Yes, because that's why when you make it an object, that if you have like at Belmont they an object.
I think it was like 60 something.
Okay, so 60, yeah, ridiculous. Then that object can hit all 60 speakers, not just the 7.1.2 bed.
Gotcha.
Make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so that's why yeah.
So you're routing most of your tracks and music to the 7.1 bed, 7.1.2 bed.
That's where, because I'm just starting this.
And that's what you've done so far.
The first person that I saw that's been doing this, was their suggestion, so that's where I'm starting.
Okay.
Right? So I'm kind of understanding, especially when we went over to Belmont yesterday, that was just so much more of an eye-opener for me because I was using headphones first, and I didn't really get the punch thing. Like listening to it in the room, I'm like, oh yeah, I do have to keep most of it in the front because that's where the impact's coming from.
Yeah.
And when you do break things out, it's like, oh, okay, I can see how I can perceive that now. Like I was able to look at the joystick and be like, oh, if I put it there, it's going to cover.
If you put it at a specific point on this panner, how big of a physical space will that actually seem to perceive in a room?
Exactly.
In a big room.
In a big room, right. So now I can say, okay, now I know, like I don't have to put, I'm trying in headphones, like, oh, I want the vocal to be up here, but then I put the vocal where I thought it was going to be cool. Good up there, you know?
It makes me want to think, let me hit this for a second.
We're fine. Push it aside every time.
So here,
there's a perfect example. I heard that delay move back behind me, but I know in the room, of course, you don't have as many speakers with two headphones as a gigantic space, so it's not going to translate perfectly.
Right.
So that's what you were basically trying to do, was establish when I'm hearing this in headphones, how's it actually going to translate?
Right. So I know, I was just looking at my parameters. Like I know, like if my size is down at like 19.
Yeah.
Right. I have it. Look how big I had it. Right. So if it's at 19. And I had it somewhere around here in the back of the room, that's going to take up the whole back side of the wall and the back side.
So
speakers.
Even though here in headphones it doesn't sound like that much because headphones really have a hard time playing sound behind you or making it seem that way. In that space, even panning something relatively small, you're saying in a real space, it sounded comparatively gigantic.
Yes, it's like I was able to like that.
Even that right there, it sounds okay.
Like because that's what the object can do.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But it covers so many more speakers.
Wow.
Than I thought it would.
Yeah.
But
I wonder if they're going to be releasing specific headphones to be able to play. Like that would sell necessarily. Nobody's going to go out and just buy headphones specifically to hear surround, will they?
Probably not. But if they start having the option that it's a standard like a 360 headphone because they already have surround headphones already. So if that becomes the norm, which you know,
well, that gives them a new way to resell the same content.
I would hope so.
I mean,
right?
who wouldn't want to sit in the middle
that?
of the Beatles and listen to that mix as it actually felt like in the studio? I would.
I would too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would be really cool. I mean, and we need to progress, you know.
And you take something like virtual reality too, where obviously the ability to then put somebody in a 360 space where you've remixed it with a surround environment, now being able to move around in that space, that's a game changer.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And that's
a
why
really
I'm
interesting way to
I'm
experience.
super excited about that. Okay, so back to like theory of this, right?
Yeah.
So look.
Push it aside every time.
Yeah.
Every time that we fight, don't matter.
I mean, that's essentially what a video game is doing, is remixing on the fly. But yeah, it'll be interesting when the two continue to merge. And this is really kind of the most merged they've become, video games and music mixing.
So you can also send individual channels here to different parts of the bus. So, like, if we go down to the kick real quick, right? Let's go down here.
Try to pretend that we're fine. Push.
So I'm sending. Let's go. Let's solo the kick. Right.
Okay.
And you hear that?
Yeah.
That's not reverb. That's the environment. That, like, the false environment that it creates.
Do you define that somewhere? Do you define the size of the space, the virtual space, or that's just essentially
that's
the Atmos system is just going to do that in whatever space it actually plays back in?
Or that's what it seems like to me. It's like that's the binaural thing, because then if I go back to the Dolby thing, right, and then I switch this headphone mode to stereo, right? Now listen.
Yeah, it's different.
You hear that? It's like that's the mix. So you kind of got to go back and forth, and then if I make this again binaural.
Yeah. It's putting it in the space.
It's in the space, and I'm not making that space, right? So I was like, okay, so that took a little bit to get used to, right?
Yeah.
But okay, so like I was saying about these buses and things like that. So we got our kick drum. I'm bussing from my kick drum because it's a stereo object, right? Or I'm sorry, it's a stereo signal. I got to be careful with the word object.
Right.
That I am panning. See?
Yeah.
That I panned in a little bit, because if I right here versus let me mute this center channel.
Wow.
See how ready? Farther away, right?
Yeah.
Then here.
It's interesting. You made the point earlier about how this suddenly changes the way you mix, where instead of having to use EQ to carve space, suddenly you've got space to carve space. You've got it's
like it's positional,
right?
So I'm using this. I can bring it closer to you, and it'll sound louder.
I'm curious about how that folds down. How does that fold down to a stereo mix?
I know, right? So that's why when I flipped over to the other mode, right? So it's like it sounded still like that. It sounded like a kick, but it doesn't sound like how that one kick sounds in the space. So it's like I guess it's going to be a balance between checking that, or maybe then if I'm doing it on real speakers in a room, that becomes easier because then I could feel the speaker and I can feel the positioning versus me pumping in the room.
It's interesting that Dolby hasn't really published any guidelines or like, hey, here's how you should mix music for this environment. There's obviously been a lot of film and TV and movies done.
Right.
So, wow, interesting. Well, there's a lot of things you can do with it.
Yeah, and the first ones are going to be super safe to where it's like they were saying, it's going to everything's going to live in the bed.
Yeah.
You know, and then they're just going to spread some cool things out here and there. You know, but Deadmau5 is saying that he's going to only mix in Atmos.
Really?
And then let the renderer do the down mix for him.
Interesting.
You know?
Wow.
So that's going to change, definitely change his creativity and the way he makes his tracks, right?
Sure.
If he's only going to mix in Atmos, because why not? He has the room, he has the RMU, he's going to do it, right?
Right.
because we can. He's all about that.
So just to clarify something what Anthony was just saying, so essentially when you're mixing through this gets you the software point of being able to mix to an Atmos file. But then there's an actual, if you want to create a file that's ready for distribution, you've got to go through one of Dolby's rendering mastering units or recording and mastering units.
Yeah.
It's a dedicated computer that does that.
Correct.
So you have to have access to one of those.
Right. And that's, it's like you can do this all day. And then, you need to be able to, I'm not sure if there's
I'm sure
there's a mastering suite. I don't think you need to have the computer. It's just a computer.
Yeah.
Now.
Okay.
Like, it's a separate
So you don't
machine.
have to buy a bunch of boxes to do this.
Right. If you can run the mastering suite, it can through the LAN hook see it. So here I'll show you that part of it here. So now in the setup tab you'll see they have this Atmos here. So because I'm running it says RMU host, I'm running it on my machine itself.
Yeah.
So that's my local. But if I didn't, I would be able to type in its IP address, or if it was on the same network, it would automatically recognize it.
Show up there.
Yeah. So
so that's connecting it to the Atmos rendering software that you've got right there, or this Atmos routing software.
Right. That's basically what this is. This is
render.
Yeah, and you would need the mastering suite then to be able to then print
your master stems, objects, tracks, files. What do they call it?
Exactly. So it's like, what does that mean? It's like you have to print the 7.1 bed, and then in movie world it's effects 7.1, music 7.1, and then the dialogue 7.1. So I'm going to approach it that way too. Just like that's what I learned from yesterday.
Yeah.
To see what the deliverable for the movie was.
Yeah.
And to understand, okay, so one bus for all those separate things. So you can see here, I only have one 7.1 bus set up right now. That means I need 2 more to where I should have all my vocals going through one. I should have all my effects going through one. I should have all the instruments going to one. Similar to how I was, I approach just mixing the music in general. So I started this session. I didn't start it as a fresh Atmos mix. I pulled up my mix and then
started rerouting
and just started to reroute it. Right.
Yeah.
So now as I'm going, I'm learning, okay, so now I'll probably make a drum 7.1 bus or a 5.1 drum bus, right?
Okay.
Because if I just needed it to be,
you don't need to go you don't have to go the overheads.
Right. So I can, you know what I mean?
If the drums are not encapsulating me, I don't know how it will.
Or just how to creatively use the panner, I could then make a 5.1 bus, do panning, and then send that 5.1 bus to the 7.1 bus.
It's incredible what's going to be possible with that.
Yeah. So
okay, so show me a little bit more about some of your creative use of delays. We started on that earlier, but I'm really curious to see what you've done there.
Cool. So let me actually find a little spot that has there we go. So many tracks.
There's a lot of tracks.
Just trying to find the vocal. These.
I've heard you can use color coding to help you identify some tracks from others.
You can see it. Look, I got some of that going on over here in the drums.
I'm crazy here, but if I were to open that up and hit this bad boy, boom! Suddenly, I can visually tell without having to read all these tiny little guys here. I can tell these guys are related. Now, that's assuming they are. I don't know if they are.
They may be.
Maybe. Organization and session workflow.
Yes. Really? Anybody want to be my assistant and learn how to do that? Because I don't want to do that anymore. But you should learn how to do that, because that will get you a job.
It would definitely help. It does help one find a track.
Okay, so here's the delays.
I know you deserve better. So much better than this. I know you deserve better. So much better.
I'll mute the reverb.
I know you deserve better. So much better than this.
So those delays, similar to the way we would have used to done it with AUXs, but just to bounce a couple different delays, essentially chaining delays. You're doing that now, but with delays moving through space.
Correct. So
front to back.
One is a quarter note delay, and then I have a half note delay.
Wow. That's really fun.
And then one has a little, they don't actually have regeneration on them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one. So instead of it using a quarter note delay and using the feedback knob and it creating the extra regeneration,
right.
I'm just throwing one in a quarter note delay. It does it, just delays it once.
Right.
And then it hits the...
Are you then routing that out to another object, or you're actually sending all of those delays on different sends from the vocal track?
First, I'm sending them to the delays.
Yep.
Then I'm sending them from the delays to the objects.
Yep.
In space. So I got so you see here that it hits 3 and 4, then it goes to the front of the room, and then 5 and 6 goes to mid, 33 and 34 go to the back.
Gotcha.
And that's these 3 objects here. That one is placed in that space. One is placed in the middle.
Yeah.
And then this one is placed in the rear of the room. So
nice.
So you can hear it hit the front first.
So it's not just bouncing side to side, but front to back. You can really create some interesting surprise for the listener that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the things that you can do and how you can approach that, you know, to kind of just create a space.
So I was talking with some students today about mixing, and we were actually talking about auxiliary sends and returns. So this concept of changing those over time in a mix is part of what makes a good mix interesting and able to be listened to over and over and over. And I started by saying, hey, how many of you have a favorite song that you've listened to at least 100 times? And everyone in the room has a favorite song they've listened to. And I said, why? And some said it's a great song. Well, that's true. But I said, why don't you listen to covers of that song 100 times? We're like, well, because you always hear something interesting and new. So you have always been somebody that's made interesting mixes with a lot of intricacies and little things to hear that just grab you, time after time, at least all the songs of yours that I've heard. So what are you most excited about this in terms of being able to change the way you mix?
I like
for more of those layers and surprises.
Well, it's where you can actually feature these layers now. Like I can put you, like I was saying, inside of the mix. So if I want the kick drum to be in front of you, you got that, and I can have my vocals over here. But like, if you're having like background vocals, you can make it sound like it's over to the left of you and above you, or to the right and above you. So with that creatively and of a dynamic of the song, like Billie Eilish released her stuff in Atmos. So like, I want to hear what they chose to do, like, because some of that stuff, it's so minimal, but you can create, there's so much space then to create this whole environment. Like the reverb throws, when you hear like a snare drum, hit, and you got this reverb, it's like you can make that reverb move in a way, you can actually, instead of it being a flat reverb that you're simulating going in space, it's like now you create that space.
It's funny because I can already hear us talking about this like stereo is such old news that even though everything is still being done that way, it's like, oh my gosh.
Mono,
well, I mean, but you think about that must have been similar to when we shifted from mono to stereo, 40, 50, however many years ago. Well, I mean, a lot of engineers at the time said, stereo, you don't need stereo. And when they went from vinyl to cassette or to tape and vice versa, everybody's like, I'm not sure. But then once you have the abilities, it is hard to go back.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting if Universal's experiment or any of these others, really take off with releasing songs in an immersive format, but people can get the convenience of wearing headphones and still get that immersion.
Yeah. And that's where I think the creativity, now that we have the tools, it's a race to who can be the most creative with them.
Right.
And create that new experience because we have the technology. No one knows what that experience is going to be, and no one's going to know, or no one knows now how good it can be because no one's really done it yet.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of be on the forefront of that and try to create that experience, be the standard, right, of experience. Well, like, wow, did you hear that Atmos mix? That was
Yeah.
a really clever way to do it.
Right. Well, this is definitely the time when everybody is still figuring out how that's going to look.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
So,
all right.
So, I mean, that's the Atmos stuff. So, I mean, let's kind of go into...
now, if we need to take a few minutes and just talk about session organization, I would consider this an intervention and
man.
a friendly... I'm just here to...
It's not that bad, actually. It's really not. Look, I got all my 808s up here. I got my kick drum, my snare drum, my toms, my hi-hats.
I completely agree.
It's right here. I got my stomps
Look
and
at
my
that.
loops.
You
right
can see
here.
all the colors.
But it kind of gets a little... Well, this is all the extra shit,
That's
you know,
right,
like
just
that. Look,
extra.
so no, this is a perfect example.
Okay, show it to me.
This is all that really matters in the song,
Yeah.
right? And then the stuff that I didn't really start to organize yet really didn't make that much of an impact on the overall picture of the song. So
yeah,
that's kind of how my brain works, I guess. It's like, oh, that sound comes in once in the whole entire song.
Right.
You know, it's...
Why has Avid not yet?
I don't know.
I mean, because I'd need to be able to zip up a whole bunch of those down to one little track. I feel like every other DAW has done that.
Yeah, that would be nice.
So nice.
Ableton does that.
Yeah, I feel like kind of everybody does, don't they? And you can do it to some degree with the show hide tracks window on the left-hand side.
Oh, yeah. That's been my friend lately here.
Yeah,
I always forget to use this guy over here, but this is the best way to move shit around for sure.
That's definitely the way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Let's go through this track a little bit.
Yeah.
I had fun making this. So, let's listen to the elements in this this hook here. So we got this drop synth, right? I got some solo synth. That's my drops, and then I got there's this other bad boy over here. Let's see where those are. Got some lower synths. These guys. One little.
What synth are you using to program a lot of those?
Serum.
Yeah.
So, like,
I don't even know why I asked.
Here's a picture of that, right?
Yeah.
And then show you where that's located. See, that's behind us.
Wow.
Right here.
Yeah.
And then how that kind of sounds with this. And then this object. So the sound sounds like it's like I wanted it to, like in the stereo version, right? It gets with the sidechain stuff, it gets lower in volume and then it pulses up louder.
Right. Yeah.
So what I did with the panner is I made it sound like that, but then come out at you in space.
Yeah.
So that's the type of stuff that you can do with the Atmos. Is you can, I wanted it to sound like it's pumping and then coming closer to you in stereo, but you can only do that with amplitude. Now you can literally in space bring it from in front of the screen right in front of your face and back down with the panner. So that was a really cool thing to do.
Heck yeah.
Had fun playing with that. Sounds so cool.
So it's obviously going to be something, too, where the higher the quality your headphones, the more you're going to be able to hear it.
Yeah.
Hear those differences.
I would think so.
Yeah. A couple of garbage earbuds, and you're not going to pick up a lot of the depth and sensory cues that tell you where the stuff is and as it's moving around through space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to solo these drums real quick. Let's see. Give you a picture of what's going on there.
Nice. I like that. The movement in that one. I think that's interesting because we talked earlier about how it'd be easy maybe to make it a little gimmicky, but that's a perfect example. This little sound happening kind of to my left and up and behind me. is adding this perfect addition, but it's just almost a little loopy element. And yet, because it's right there, it's like, oh, wow, it kind of surprises me when I hear it.
And that allows you to really hear the spatial stuff when you don't really do it too much, but then you do it in the right places.
Stands out. I don't know that it stood out, but it just caught me. It made this mix suddenly feel deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So like with the let's see these ride cymbals over here. Yeah. That sounds like it's over here. And then I have the ride cymbal. That also is in the back. So that's like, so if you had your drums here, right, in front of you, and then I could have the ride cymbal come in back there, or, or the hi-hat.
I was kind of hearing it up and over to the right, but above me and kind of center.
Right. So this is where it's going to, I now that I kind of know the panner a little bit better in space, that probably in the room is going to sound weird because it's harder to perceive it in the headphones.
Right. Well, I'm imagining if you're doing an Atmos mix in headphones, you almost have to err initially towards keeping stuff towards the front, because the farther you send it towards the back, the less consistent it's going to be going from there to some other playback system.
And especially in volume and impact in space.
That's true.
It's gonna
if somebody was sitting really close to the back of that environment in a larger space, then they'd probably get overwhelmed with it then.
over that back information,
Mm-hmm.
So, is there anybody watching us? Does anybody have any questions about like anything that's going on?
Atmos. I'll be curious whether it's even possible for it to come over the line.
Yeah. Yeah, drop some questions on in there if you have any. Here's a cool little part.
So if somebody was going to go, I've actually got a question while we're thinking about that. Just this plugin, and was that what it was? The production suite?
Yeah, it's a download from
Dolby.
Dolby, and you can just Google it, and I think it's on their website.
Okay.
And you can also download the renderer from their website as well.
Yeah.
They'll give you a free 30-day trial to your iLock account. And,
Interesting, fascinating stuff. All right.
I mean, I could teach you or show you guys a little bit about kind of the session itself. Some cool things. Like how I did these vocal chops and stuff.
I love those.
And then you can even see the panner on this one.
Wow. So what's that automation look like there if you throw it up on lanes beneath the track?
Is there a way to bring them all up?
Yeah, just toggle down a little automation lane to lower left-hand corner. Yep. And then you could just keep adding lanes. I'm curious what that looks like as they move around that much. Goodness gracious. That's a lot of parameters being automated.
See, if this was Ableton, we can do this a lot easier. Let us do that.
Yeah, it's not as easy.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So yeah,
I was moving the panner around, and I'm learning that too. That I'm gonna have to either get like a MIDI controller or something.
Yeah, to be able to physically move it. Yeah, it would be a lot faster.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot faster than trying to do it by hand. That's for sure.
Wow.
But yeah, I'll have to bring this song in, and we'll do a proper mix down of this song too, because this is really cool. Oh, and then so another thing that I was kind of messing with is stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of my favorite plugins. And it's just part of that theory thing of how I'm going to approach mixing this. So this is a directional EQ.
Directional EQ.
Fuck yeah, this thing is badass. Okay,
directional EQ.
I don't think you've seen this yet on the program. So let me go to something, and I'm going to put it on. Let's see. There, I have it on the drop sync. And I'm gonna turn this off.
Are you automating something?
Yeah, I'm gonna turn it off, and then I'm gonna just make this flat. But listen to the divergence. Ready? Watch.
Wow. Boy, that.
Then I'll sync the front.
Huh. Boy, there's a lot of choices there.
Isn't it? Because that's some more speakers, but now that's more like that, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like how, and then messing with height, you know, like where that's gonna sit height wise in that, you know, because then I can narrow it and bring it up, so it'll sit like in the middle of something, you know, and if I can get it to pan like through you and then like get louder, that's just.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so but
it's certainly options that you've never had before when mixing something.
Absolutely.
What about if I make it feel like it's an arrow going right through their head?
Yes. But okay, so here's the
melody must pierce their heart.
Yes.
4 feet 3 inches.
Here is the directional EQ. So what this thing does is, all right, you have 5 bands, and then you have degrees, right? So this allows you to select a certain portion within the stereo field, and then adjust a certain amount of Q. So here, I'll solo just the middle section, and I can turn up 400 or take away 430 hertz just in the mono, right?
Yeah.
Or what about at 18 degrees, right? To my right, I at 18 degrees. So here I'm going.
Oh my gosh. What is this one called? DMF directional EQ?
DDMF, yep.
DDMF.
So listen to this.
Oh, that's fun.
See how I'm literally turning it up there, and listen when I adjust the Q.
No wonder you love this plugin.
I'll make it even more dramatic. Ready? A small Q. Right, well, make it bigger. Or if I cut it.
Wow. Talk about shaping and sculpting your sound.
And you see how it's only at that point in
space.
In space, yeah. Right? So then I'm thinking, okay, well, if I'm gonna place something in a space, then I can use an EQ like this to actually really get accurate in the positioning.
Wow.
Of that.
Okay, so to compare, earlier you said, hey, we don't necessarily have to use EQ to give something a spatial sense anymore because we can physically move it around in space into these virtual objects. But now you're using the directional EQ to further refine where is within that space.
Correct.
because the EQ allows you to
pinpoint
at least the angle.
Yes. Of it, right? Now, do you see now like where my mind's going?
Yeah, I see why you're so excited.
Because then you can say, okay, you can
really create immensely more dense or intricate or delicate mixes than you've ever been able to before. Because suddenly you really will have a lot more fine control of where something ends up.
Where it ends up.
In a way, this actually even gives you a little more control. I wonder why Dolby hasn't integrated something like that.
Maybe they have a secret
Maybe
tool.
they have an EQ objects.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Well, like this allowed, for me, I think about it in the depth of things.
Yeah.
Because in music, I love depth and space. And that's what our reverbs and delays are traditionally creating for us.
Right.
But with being able to put something in space, I can make something sound farther away, not only with amplitude and the spatial effect, but now with EQ in a specific spot. So if I need it to sound like a little brighter and higher up, I can boost the high end and it'll imagine that it comes up in the air more than something that's darker, you know?
Wow.
So it's really cool.
That's really cool. I don't think I've ever even run across a directional EQ.
But even in stereo mixing, this thing's badass because so I have my drop synths and I have background vocals or guitars that also share the same frequency range. So then I can say when they overlap at 18 degrees or whatever, I can just say, okay, let me cut a little bit of 2.5 out in those guitars so that that vocal can sit and shine through, you know?
Yep.
Same thing with the imager. That's why it's like I can spread out a sound and then because I spread out 1.5K to 3K out 30%.
Yeah.
It's more out. I can then go with a directional EQ and go towards it and turn it up, making it even louder and brighter.
More present in that
only
space.
out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's a lot of new options.
A lot of new options. So
very cool.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty good for today, huh?
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I think that's number one. Thank you so much for having me on.
No doubt.
I really enjoyed it. It was great to see everybody out there on internet land and for taking a quick look at the Atmos surround mixing environment for music and some of what you're doing there.
Yeah, man, this is a lot of fun, and give us all a thumbs up. I love having him on the program. If we can get more of his time, which he's making for us,
I'm working on it.
He's the man. These will get a lot more interesting because us two talking, we can just sit here and talk all night about this shit. So
we've got the rest of the day.
So let us know. Give us a thumbs up and let us know if you guys want to hear anything geeky in the future, and we'll tackle it for you.
Running across this later, we'd love to hear and make more stuff that's useful for you and answers your questions.
No doubt. Okay, cool. Falcone here from Helping Our Music Evolve in East Nashville, Tennessee. Have a great weekend.
Out.
Bye. Roll this music one more time for y'all. This is wherever we'll get the cheers and we'll have our own outro music.
Yeah. Nice.
Try to get in my car, but I can't drive. Put into my